welcome back to the Starting Point Photography segment of the show. Thank you guys very much for joining us here this Wednesday evening, the last show of 2018. We've had about 50 weeks, I think less than that, probably 45. We had several screw-ups over the week. Speaking of screw-ups, one of the things I like to talk about with beginning photographers is screwing up. One of the things that you got to worry about as a beginner is so many things. I think, and Melissa, as a beginner, can correct me on this, I think it might be one of the biggest frustrations for a new photographer, beginning photographer, is seemingly all the things that you need to remember in order to get those shots. So you got to watch this, look up for this, and watch this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Mm-hmm. And you and I were talking about this before. We were talking about what I'm going to teach in the class in Portugal. For those folks who are going to be joining us in Portugal next March, Melissa was just curious, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to discuss? And one of the things that I'm going to be talking to people about is what to think about, how to think about photography. And that's one of the important aspects to becoming a better photographer is thinking about your photography. And ironically enough, the more you think about your photography, eventually the less you'll think about your photography. It's kind of strange. I kind of liken it to the idea that for those of you who may have been athletes, say in junior high school or high school, and your basketball coach taught you how to shoot a free throw, and he gave you the technique. He told you to keep your elbow in and keep your arm loose and how to stand and how to focus and that kind of stuff. And then you went and shot free throws. And I remember doing this thousands of times and thinking about exactly what the coach said. Okay, my feet have to be here. My elbow has to be in here. And I have to give them this wrist and this hand and that kind of, and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. And then after a while, it became instinctive. I didn't think about it anymore. I shot free throws without ever thinking about shooting a free throw. I remember this happening in grade 11. I remember standing in the free throw line and just feeling, hey, this is a completely natural thing for me to do. I missed a shot, but but that's the thing. You want to think enough about photography that you stop thinking about photography, that it becomes instinctive. And that takes practice. One of the other things that beginners don't do nearly enough because of time or effort is practice enough. A practice where that stuff becomes automatic. I think one of the fun things that Melissa and I have talked about when it comes to the mistakes that she's liable to make, I think the biggest one for a newbie is not looking behind the shot. That you take a shot and then you look at it later and you go, there's a tree sticking out of his head. Or there's a telephone line or something, a branch going through the side of their face. That's one of the keys, I think, to start thinking about. Don't just look at the subject of your shot. Look at behind the subject. Look, it's the four corners idea. Look in all four corners of your viewfinder. It just takes a split second, just a quick look, and then look behind the person, or behind the cat, or behind the statue, or behind the thing that you're focused on. So start doing that to get to be a better photographer. The other aspect that you and I talked about, and I love the fact that you have grasped this, is the idea of telling a story. That's what you were saying to me that you were trying to do, right? When you take pictures now, you're trying to tell a story, or thinking about telling the story.
Yes. And
you don't have to have the story pre-told, although it does help sometimes. Melissa and I went out to Cliff Gilker. Help me out.
Cliff Gilker.
Cliff Gilker Park. And before I went, I'd been to that park before, and before I went, I had shots in mind already. I already had an idea of the kinds of images I wanted to shoot. I was shooting video and stills, and I knew I wanted this shot, that shot, and this shot. So I was thinking about the shots before I even took the shots. Have you frozen again?
Yes.
You froze on screen? God damn it. All right, I lost Melissa again. Hang on a second. So I'm thinking about these shots before I'm even anywhere near taking them. And that helps me because once I get to the place, I can go, okay, there's that shot I was thinking about. There's that tree I was wanting to shoot. There's that thing that I wanted to have in my image. There's a great example of it was that there's a particular tree, a particular set of branches there in Cliff Gilker Park that's just covered in moss. It's just beautiful how much moss is all over this particular tree. It's not Spanish moss. Spanish moss. Yeah, you've been to Florida. You know what Spanish moss is. It doesn't hang down off trees like Spanish moss does, but this is just beautiful, deep green moss. And it's I think it's a fallen tree, and so its branches are. It looks like a giant spider to me. It looks like a big, giant green spider. And I love taking that picture because it tells a story. It tells a story of this tree that's fallen down, and there's these branches. But it tells a secondary story of, in my mind anyway, it looks like a big, giant green monster spider in the middle of the woods. So I'm thinking about the shots before I take the shots, and I'm imagining the shots before they actually happen. And I'm telling a story with the shots. If you start focusing on telling stories with your shots, when you point the camera at something and you're thinking about the story, your pictures will get better automatically. I promise you, that's the way it works. That when you start thinking about the kind of images that you want to capture, you will automatically start taking better pictures and looking for better stories. When we go to Lisbon, it's one of the things that we're really going to encourage people. I'm going to be talking to them. We're going to be at the Belém Monastery. Sorry, at the Belém Tower or the Jerónimos Monastery or the São Jorge Castle. And I'll be asking you, what's the story that you're looking at right now? Before you pick your camera up, put it to your eye, what's the story you want to tell? And I guarantee you, a lot of times people will go, I don't know. And I'll say, well, why take the picture? You know, I don't. The idea of starting point photography in Lisbon isn't to take tourist pictures. We're going to try to stay away from taking the same pictures everyone else is taking. We're going to start thinking about photography and thinking about taking better pictures of these things that aren't just straight up tourist shots that your friends and family don't give a rat's ass about. One thing that I know you've had a problem with, and it's especially problematic with DSLR cameras, you're better at it with your iPhone, which I find really, it makes perfect sense, is focus. I've seen Melissa's gotten very used to the idea of taking your iPhone and tapping on the thing that you want to have in focus. Do you agree with that?
Oh, that's what I do naturally now. Now I'm on to looking in the background.
Oh, you're past that now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I don't think about doing the focus, tapping the square anymore. I just do it. Good. And then I go, oh, what's going on? It's like this morning when I took a photograph of you in IHOP, I said, too bad the background is so awful.
That TV.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're talking about here is that Melissa is very comfortable now with the idea of, okay, that's the thing I want in focus. I'll tap on it.
Mm-hmm.
On the iPhone, it's simple. On a DSLR, it's a little more difficult sometimes. Quite often, your focus point is set to the dead center of the image. That's not bad, not a good thing, not a bad thing. It's a neutral thing. But sometimes you want to move it around. And I've seen you a couple times with the Olympus M1 that we have, because it's so, one of the downsides of that camera is it's very easy to push the button and have your focus point move over to one of the other slots. And then Melissa will take a picture, and the focus will be over here and not on the thing that she wanted to in the center. So concentrating on focus, where your focus is very, very important for a beginner. Again, especially with a DSLR. The key in a DSLR when it comes to people or anything with eyes, people, animals, statues, a painting, whatever it is, make sure that focus point, when you half press the shutter button and you get that little bleep and that little light lights up, it's green or red or black or whatever it might be, and that tells you where your camera is going to focus. Make sure one of those focus points is on one of the eyes, generally the closest eye of whatever it is you're shooting. It's a truism of photography that if the eyes aren't sharp, your picture is useless. There's just this thing that if the eyes are out of focus, if you had the focus on their chin or on their head or something behind them, if the person's eyes aren't sharp, because we're so used to looking at human beings, and when we see human beings, we look them in the eye, their eyes are in focus, unless you're wearing glasses. So when that doesn't happen, that immediately throws the shot off. It can be a perfectly beautiful photo, but if their eyes are out of focus, if you've shot their eyes out of focus, then you've ruined the shot. A mistake I've made, and I've talked about this 1,000 times, my eyes are on crooked, speaking of eyes. My eyes are 4 degrees off. I'm guessing at that, but I'm not sure. Because every picture I take needs about 4 degrees of tilt. Mm-hmm. It's so weird. Even I'm looking on the iPhone with the grid on it, I still have this little bizarre, and on my DSLR it's even worse. All my photos when I bring in the Lightroom immediately need to be tilted a little bit to the left. It's very strange. So keep that in mind when you're looking at things in the background. Any lines that have to be in the background, whether it be horizon lines or window frame lines or building lines, if they're tilted like that, it's going to throw off your shots. You can fix it fairly easily, both in the camera, the iPhone camera's edit button, in any editing program that you use on your Macintosh or on your iPhone. They'll all have the ability to straighten photos. Snapseed, Lightroom, all that kind of stuff, all have the ability to straighten out a photo.
And the built-in level, like Dave is saying?
Yes, the built-in level. Wait, on the iPhone? I don't want to speak for Dave. I think he means the camera. There is a built-in level on a lot of DSLRs. I don't use that one because I find it to be too difficult, and I end up focusing too much because on my Nikon D600, it's got a level both for horizontal but also for this way, and so it tends to give me this, and I'm fighting the camera because you can't remain perfectly level yourself. If it's on a tripod, yes, but in your hands, I don't use it that way. When I'm hand holding the shot, I will just use a horizon line, and then if I screw it up, I know I can fix it in post. Basically, I'll use the level on the tripod when the shot requires it, when I'm shooting directly ahead. But I don't often shoot directly ahead. I tend to shoot, and this is just for lack of a better term, a style of mine. You've gone dead again, haven't you?
Yes.
God damn it. This is just a personal style of mine. I tend to shoot upwards or downwards on a shot, and the level isn't that important when it comes to that stuff.
See, I love that idea that Monty has. I've thought about this for Lisbon. Of course, you would do it, but I've thought about it where Brad took a shot, and then Monty changed things for him and said, "Take it again," yes. and it looked so much better. And that's what I hope people get from Lisbon is, you took this, let's go take it again 3 days or whatever, or an hour from now or whatever, and look at what do you think? And so they're seeing these immediate results of, oh, that looks so much better.
I think that's going to be one of the fun things about Lisbon. Is the idea is that we're all going to arrive there on Saturday, and on Sunday we're going to do the hop on bus thing. And just sort of get the lay of the land of the city. Oh, that's there kind of thing. You can hop on whenever you want. But the idea of the shots that you take on that Sunday, because you will, because you're traveling around, and then look at those, and then we'll come back to a lot of those places during the week. And hopefully the goal is you've learned A, B, C, D, E over the period of time, and the shots that you took on the Sunday will hopefully be much, much better on Thursday.
Well, I think you should pick 4 or half a dozen, maybe that's too many, and go, this is where, take a shot from here, and then we're going to do the exact same shot a week from now, 4 days from now. So it could be the square, it could be this doorway that you love with that beautiful tile work. Yeah. Take one now, and then let's see you take one 5 days from now and see if it changes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great idea because it'll show me if you're learning anything.
Yes.
And B, it'll show you that hopefully you are learning things.
So. And then you as a beginner go, wow, that looks beautiful. I think I'd take that home and put it in a frame up on my wall to represent my trip.
I still remember that, I don't know if it was the first time, but that time when you took a shot. We were in Australia a year ago. We were in Australia.
Yes, we were.
You took a shot of the boys playing in the surf or the water. And I remember looking over at you and thinking, oh, I'm so proud of her. She's actually gotten down low.
Yeah,
she wasn't just standing in the surf and taking a picture. You had gotten down almost on your knees, shooting the boys bodyboarding in this little surf that was there. And then you came to me afterwards. You went, you'd be so proud of me. I actually got down low.
Yeah. I got wet from the waves.
Right, exactly.
But there's a picture on your screensaver on your Apple TV of a picture of a guy, relating again to Monty's story, laying down with his camera.
Yes, that's right.
And I think for me, and knowing and having people in my life that have been photographers, my ex-husband was and still is a wonderful photographer. I had friends that were very good photographers. More so her, is that you have to be a bit bold. You have to think, it doesn't matter what this looks like. I'm going to get way down, or I'm going to lay on my back, or I'm going to do it. It doesn't matter what people think about it.
That's a good point.
You have to be a bit bold and a bit courageous.
And a bit unself-conscious.
Yes.
That I'm going to take this shot. I don't care how silly I look. And the guy looked he was lying down on a bench. It's a park bench. I don't know what he was shooting, but he's lying down. And he's obviously a tourist because he's dressed in little, shorts.
Yeah, but I looked at it and thought, he looks cool.
Exactly.
I like it. Way to go.
He's lying down. He's shooting up at something. Yes. And he's getting the angle he wanted.
Yes.
I thought that was great.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I see beginners...
you don't have to care what the muggles think about you.
Exactly.
It's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to twist around this pole, and because I'm going to be bold and take the photo that I want. That's it doesn't matter what people think.
And it's easier to do that in groups too. It's easier if I'm by myself. I might feel self-conscious doing that thing, but if I'm with a group of people, maybe I won't. I don't know. Sometimes maybe you'll feel more self-conscious if you're with a group of people.
In a group, so
it doesn't matter. Everyone's different. Everyone does things differently. One of the other things, and this is something I've talked to photographers about a lot, beginners, is processing, post-processing. I've had beginners say, "Oh, I never post-process anything," and my first thought is, your photos aren't very good. There are very, very, very few photographs that are perfect out of the camera. It'd be very, very hard for any photo to be perfect, just as the JPEG or the RAW file out of your camera. Almost every photo needs some sort of post-processing to some level or degree. And that's one of the keys to becoming a better photographer, image creator, is knowing how much post-processing to do. Too much, it looks ridiculous. HDR, if you go overboard with HDR, I've got a friend of mine who posts stuff, and I was like, oh, Jesus, it's just crap. Because he over HDRs everything. And it looks ridiculous. It looks completely unrealistic. And I hate his shots. You want to be able to, and this is a personal opinion, by the way, as a beginner, you want to post-process your image so that it becomes what you saw in that place. So the colors are vibrant, because a lot of times your colors will be a little dull as a RAW file. You got to bump them up in the iOS camera app or Halid or Snapseed or whatever it might be, or in Photoshop or Lightroom or any other number of apps that will do that. Colors can be bumped up a bit. The shadows need to be down a little bit. You got to do a little bit of stuff. For example, my D600, for whatever reason, makes everything I shoot that's red too orange. So I have to go in and post-process all my RAW files on my D600 so that the red becomes more red and less orange, because the camera doesn't capture exactly the colors I saw when I was in that spot, in that place. So you got to know the level of post-processing you can do. You got to do some. You got to learn to do some. And if you're using your iPhone, there's all kinds of apps that you can use. And if you're using your Mac, there's quite a few apps you can use there. The Photos app that comes with your Macintosh is a pretty good app for this. Lightroom is my favorite tool, but there's a bunch of others too. But you got to do something. You can't do too much, at least not as a beginner. Yes, you can eventually go and just blow out your sky because that's your artistic choice. But as a beginner, learn the basics first before you go whole hog and overboard when it comes to post-processing and things like that. Along with the idea of that we were talking about of looking behind somebody, looking for things jutting out of their head or images that are wonky, is bad cropping. Whether you do it in post-process or whether you do it in the camera, you have to look out for where you cut things off. So if you are going to take a picture of a building, perfect example is taking a picture of Big Ben, the clock tower in London. I've seen so many pictures from a distance that have taken and they've cut off the top spire of Big Ben. It looks kind of odd. Or the top of the Eiffel Tower, or the top of whatever, or the bottom of things. You have to remember you need to keep, if you're going to show, basically if you can show 3/4 of the thing, show all of it. If you're going to crop something, crop it in a way that is really, really tight. I've got a shot that I really like of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, but it's just of the arch of the Eiffel Tower. You know it's the Eiffel Tower just from that arch. I didn't need to show you the entire Eiffel Tower. I showed you enough for your memory to be triggered and know that's the Eiffel Tower. But if I had shot the entire Eiffel Tower, I wouldn't have cut it off at the top observation deck. I wouldn't have cut off at the bottom. When it comes to people, be very, very careful where you crop the people. You can't crop them at the chin. That was kind of silly. You shouldn't crop them. Basically, the trick is don't crop people at places that bend. So don't crop at the neck. Don't crop at the shoulder, at the elbow. Don't crop at the wrist or the fingers. You can crop if you're shooting, say from the waist up. Shoot from the chest up, not the waist. If you're going to go lower, shoot from mid thigh. Don't crop at the knees. Don't crop their feet out. If you don't like their feet or their feet aren't in a good place, then shoot from their, say, mid thigh up or from mid chest up. Start thinking about those kind of things. Not only looking behind the image that you're shooting, but look to the edges of whatever it is that's important to make sure you're not cropping out something that's, especially in human beings, because we know what a human being is supposed to look like. And when you crop those things out, I've seen people crop at the wrist, it just looks weird. You know?
Just don't crop at the joints.
Just don't crop at anything that bends.
Yeah.
Don't crop at the fingers, don't crop at the wrist, elbow, shoulder. And that's a good rule of thumb. Just don't crop at people's bendy bits is the easiest way to do that. How many of you guys is anyone getting a new camera for Christmas? Anyone getting new gear for Christmas? Send me an email to Sean at yourmaclifeshow.com and let us know what kind of goodies you are getting for Christmas.